The following is an HDNet original presentation.
Good evening. Tonight, in honor of the start of the new baseball season, we'd planned to bring you an encore presentation of a program we did last year on the Dominican Republic's dominance among players in the major leagues. And we'll have that story in a few minutes. But first, some breaking news on another investigation we've been working on. Behind the Great Wall in China. One of that country's most important voices of dissent, a man who has displayed remarkable courage in openly defying Chinese authorities, and a man we've been profiling, has suddenly disappeared. His name is Ai Weiwei, and although you may not know him, Western governments, China watchers, and local activists worry that his arrest means that the Chinese government is moving in an ominous new direction.
I think the most powerful tool to this kind of authoritarian society is to let the truth out.
This interview took place just 10 days before Ai's arrest. A reporter and a cameraman for Dan Rather Reports had met him in Beijing for an investigation about internet censorship in China.
The usage of internet still being seen as a very sensitive, even dangerous area.
Ai is the latest dissident to be swept up in a new nationwide crackdown on anti-government activists. Since the popular uprisings began sweeping through the Arab world, authorities in China have been increasingly wary, tense, and on edge. In the last few weeks, dozens of prominent activists in China have disappeared into what is believed to be government detention, something that was very much weighing on Ai's mind when we talked to him.
This is terrifying. You know, many people in past year, I know them. You know, those people are writers or just internet users. Then they have been taken away.
A fate that sounds prophetic, now that Ai has himself disappeared without a trace. The internet has given voice to Chinese critical of their own government, but it is heavily monitored and censored by the state.
They may just shut off any moment, so.
Ai has become an internet father figure of sorts in the electronic dissent movement in China, showing how the technology can be used to highlight the abuses of a corrupt government.
Normally I answer people's questions.
He tweets with thousands of Chinese every day on a site called Sina.
I use a fake name to get into this Sina.
He uses aliases to evade government censors, but it's a game of cat and mouse, and when authorities figure it out, they cut Ai off until he springs up again.
Just in like one day I got this much followers. I think the notion for change is already in the air. It's in the many young people's heart.
The reason why Ai Weiwei's arrest has become such big news around the world is because he is much more than an anonymous blogger in Beijing. He is a world-famous artist who's been called China's Andy Warhol. And even if you haven't heard of him until now, you probably know at least some of his work. It was Ai who helped design the signature Bird's Nest Stadium that was the centerpiece of the 2008 Beijing Olympics. It was considered a crowning achievement for modern China. But when the time came for the opening ceremony, Ai made a public statement of criticism, saying he would not attend because he had designed the stadium to represent freedom, not the autocracy of the Chinese state. Ai Weiwei's art is all about his politics, never shy about sharing his feelings for the Chinese government. One of his most controversial projects, in the eyes of Chinese authorities, came after the tragic Sichuan earthquake of May 2008. Thousands of children had died in shoddily built schools, and authorities weren't forthcoming, even with the names of the dead. So Ai decided to act.
we made many arguments. We said we really have to know, because otherwise we cannot trust your numbers. So at the end, they refused to tell us anything. So we said, okay, let's do a citizen investigation. I put a note on my blog. I said, now as an artist, I'm decided to try to find those names. So that wall consists of about 5,000 people.
Ai's art and online activism had come together in a direct threat to Chinese authorities, and he and his followers were able to put names and details to the dead.
A female, born in 1994.
The experience led to this art piece, displayed at a Munich, Germany museum. It was a colorful display of hundreds of children's backpacks, like those left behind by young victims in the rubble of the earthquake. They spelled out the words a grieving mother had told Ai about her daughter. It reads, "She lived happily on this earth for 7 years."
For me, this is a very, very strong message. So many life has been ignored, and so many people, human rights has been neglected in this kind of state, and nobody give a damn. But we have to remind other people, because life is really a property of the all. We all share same values when we talk about life, the dignity of life, the rights of life. So what I'm doing is just to act like a person. I don't think I'm brave, or I have any crazy ideas to change the society, but I really want to be myself, just to tell other people you also can do so. To be yourself, to state your mind clearly, and to tell people what is right and what is wrong. Nobody can stop the course of change. People asking to be happy and free and enjoy the life. No power can stop that. It's only a matter of time.
Considering that this interview happened 10 days before his arrest, he was clearly aware of the risks he was taking.
And are you scared of anything? Are you scared of them arresting you, of taking you away?
Of course, as a person, I'm quite weak. I think you only can bear that much. You constantly ask yourself if physically, mentally, you're stronger enough for that. I have to always, every day, ask myself, how long can I last if I'm in extreme conditions such as jail?
China's Ai Weiwei. The German, French, and British governments have made formal pleas to the Chinese to release Ai Weiwei. We'll have a special investigation on China and the Internet called Behind the Great Firewall. That in the coming weeks. Up next tonight, a special report from the Caribbean, baseball, and the gold mine of talent coming from the Dominican Republic. So stay with us. Tonight, an investigation into an American pastime and the big business that runs it. That business is Major League Baseball, and no country outside the United States produces more baseball talent than here in the Dominican Republic. First, some perspective. This is a small country, sharing the Caribbean island of Hispaniola with neighboring Haiti. For comparison, the Dominican Republic is only half the size of Maine, with a population roughly that of North Carolina. But despite the Dominican Republic's small size, the multi-billion-dollar business of Major League Baseball would suffer without the pipeline of prospects this country produces. The Dominican Republic is a factory of baseball talent. But tonight we ask the question, at what cost? Our story begins with a simple fact. The Dominican Republic is poor. in many rural areas, desperately poor. Education is required only through the 10th grade, but many children never go to school at all. If they work, it's in the growing tourism industry, or many live at home to help their parents in the fields. There was a time when the country's fertile soil was known for producing sugar and coffee. Now the fields are growing another lucrative export. Everywhere you look, you'll notice a constant: baseball. To play baseball here doesn't necessarily involve a ball and a bat. Sometimes it's bottle caps, sticks. The field, a parking lot. It's not a national pastime, it's a national passion.
We can practice baseball in any corner, even under the traffic lights. You can see people practicing baseball.
But baseball in the Dominican Republic is not a children's game. It's a business, big business. And once these kids grow a little older, some will become part of the biggest open market for baseball players in the world. With dreams of making it big in the U.S., like megastar Dominican athletes Pedro Martinez or David Ortiz. Many children see baseball as a chance to hit the jackpot in a land with almost no other economic opportunities. In the Dominican Republic, baseball dollars can be seen everywhere, and kids will sacrifice anything to get them.
The majority of the kids have no way of getting out of poverty. They're dropping out of school, and the only way that they can buy a home for their family, the only way that they can live decently, is to try to sign a major league contract. And it's all money.
Money. More than stardom, more than fame, and more than the game. It's an economy that's driven by survival, and it begins at a very young age.
No sé decirle, a mí me gusta el béisbol porque yo nací con la sangre de eso, para jugar eso. Desde chiquito estoy jugando vitilla y hasta mi mamá y mi papá logran apuntar, a mí me apuntaron. 1 año y medio tengo aquí. Ve, yo soy pitcher y ahora yo voy a pichar para que me respeten. Dame la pelota.
The rich pool of Dominican talent has been a bargain for Major League Baseball. For decades, they've mined the country for players they can sign at a fraction of the cost of American players. Major League Baseball has invested millions here, and each of the 30 professional baseball clubs has a training academy. The most luxurious one recently opened by the San Diego Padres. To be accepted into these academies means a chance to play ball in the U.S., and it comes with a signing bonus, often more money than these kids could imagine. But the fierce competition begins at places like the well-worn fields of Santo Domingo with a coach like Homero Lajara.
Even people who don't know baseball well know that Dominicans have a real passion for the sport. From where does that come?
You know, it's a young man's dream to close his eyes and dream and become a Juan Marichal, or to become an Albert Pujols. It's a fantasy to get them away from poverty.
Lajara trains and coaches baseball teams of boys ranging from 7 to 19 years old. But this is not your basic Little League, not by a long shot. These boys are here to attract the eye of Major League Baseball, and some of them are amazing athletes.
Well, any of these players have organized baseball potential?
You're going to see...
Lajara told us of the incredible talent on his team, like the starting pitcher, who at 16 can throw fastballs 90 miles an hour. He told us 86 of his players have been signed to contracts in the last few years, a percentage that would be the envy of any baseball program in the United States.
I laugh when people tell me there's no ball players in the United States. I laugh because I told them the problem is there that at 15, 16 years old, 17 years old, you want your child in school. developing his brains, learning what it is life is all about. Here it's baseball since you're able to walk. No reading and writing.
They play some days all day, every day.
All day long.
Do they go to school at all?
At all. They don't go. It's incredible. You know, it's just a crying shame.
No education. It's a big gamble for a potential pot of gold.
What percentage of the boys who come into the academy, what percentage of them are going to play minor league baseball in North America?
10 to 12 players a year. They give them visas to send them to the minor leagues.
But that tells me right away that the odds are very strongly against, even if you get into an academy, even if you stay in the academy, the odds are still very small that you're going to be signed even to a minor league contract.
Many tears. Baseball is hard. It's hard when you have to tell a young man he just doesn't have the talent. It's hard. It's hard when a young man, they tell him no, you know. I introduced you to a young man just now that you saw his build, and I was trying to get him a scholarship to Western Oklahoma, and the American Embassy today told him no.
This was the tall young man I met earlier.
Today, he just finished coming from to try to get his visa, and it's hard. That was his dream.
And the possibility and probability of failure is devastating parts of Dominican society. Generations of young men who don't make it in baseball end up not only uneducated, but desperately poor and with no way out.
For those who don't get into the academy, there's competition to get into the academies, right? For those who don't get into the academies, what happens to them?
That is a tragedy. That is what's happening in this country now. You're scared to go out. The muggings, people being killed. All these young men that leave their education, leave their school, and they're battling to get signed. They do not make it. Now they have to go to a normal paying job in this country, in which a normal paying job in this country will pay you between 4,000 to 6,000 pesos a month.
Which is the equivalent of about $150. So it's easy to see why every year, from every corner of the country, thousands of young men strap on the cleats and sacrifice everything for the one shot at glory.
Suavecito, suavecito. Eso es.
And it all comes down to a trainer they can trust. An entire system of independent trainers like Lahara has arisen just to prepare these players for the major leagues. To get a closer look at the independent training system in the Dominican Republic, we went to San Pedro de Macorís, a small city that has produced some of the best Dominican ballplayers and is known as the cradle of shortstops. Aston Jacobo is a trainer here. And if you want to see how the Dominican training system really works, spend a few hours here with his players under the Caribbean sun.
This kid here is only 14 years old. And we think that he's going to be a real star. Something like this kid Ramirez with the Marlins.
A player like this 14-year-old switch hitter may someday mean a big payday for trainers like Jacobo. But first, they need intensive baseball training, and to do that may mean leaving home, oftentimes leaving school, and moving in with their trainer.
Jeffrey.
He provides everything, from coaching to cooking. The training is rigorous, often 7 days a week, many hours a day.
Ole.
Kids, usually for them to be a ball player, would work as hard as anybody can imagine. We have kids that we started them at the track and field in the morning, 6 a.m. Then after that, they get to the ball field at 8:30. They work from 8:30 to about 12:30, go back home, and some of them have to come back in the afternoon, those that are not in school.
Tú eres pitcher, déjalo yo tranquilo, piche.
Though Jacobo is an independent trainer, he's much more than that. He's a mentor, a provider, and oftentimes a surrogate father. And he's been very successful. His academy is now expanding to include a dormitory that will house up to 40 prospects.
I'm helping my country, and I'm helping kids to become baseball players and fulfill their dreams. It's a big dream to become a ball player.
Most players pay nothing up front and instead promise to give their trainers a percentage of their signing bonus. The average bonus, around $100,000. Jacobo charges between 5 and 35%.
When they talk about the percentage that we charge on kids and stuff like that, they don't understand that here in Dominican, those kids are support that you have to support them in everything. Sometimes you even have to support their family. I had a case last year, 2 years ago, where I had this player and his kid brother had asthma. His mother was going crazy, and I had to take care of that.
Jacobo told us he even pays to send some of his players to school. And he says without independent trainers like him, players wouldn't realize their dreams.
Here, if the kid doesn't have somebody like me to take care of him and support him since he's a little kid, then his chances are very slim.
Trainers have come under scrutiny. In recent years, some have been associated with prospects who were caught using steroids and/or lying about their age and identity. Other trainers have been caught colluding with club officials for kickbacks on signing bonuses. Dominican baseball people have a word for these hustlers. They call them buscones.
And some of the trainers are former players who've been rejected from baseball. Without an education or a way of making a living, they go back to the only thing they know.
Bueno, yo pienso ser entrenador, ser unos entrenadores como esos de Grandes Ligas que son famosos. Ellos llegan a la Euroliga, a la Vladimir, llegan todo eso y son famosos. Bueno, yo quiero ser como ellos.
At 22 years old, Edgar Ferraria told us he's already been around the block in the baseball world. He said he began his training at the age of 6. By the time he was 20, he says the Anaheim Angels signed him, but let him go after they discovered he lied about his age. But Edgar was still determined to be a ball player.
Cuando los angelinos de Anaheim me dejaron libre, yo me sentí, boté muchísimas lágrimas, grité, lloré mucho porque yo quería hacer Grande Liga. Lloré muchísimo, pero metí mano. Después San Diego, un bucón de San Diego me vio, ellos me vieron que yo todo el tiempo he tenido condición y la disciplina también. Entonces yo de ahí me recogieron, me filmaron y estaba con ellos ahí. Bueno, más o menos iba a viajar y por la cosa del hombro que se me inflamó, no pude hacer nada. Entonces quiero ser un entrenador y quiero desarrollar a los muchachos míos y ya esa es la única carrera que yo llevo.
Edgar says that after being let go by the San Diego Padres, he became a trainer. Today, he has a cadre of young men and boys training every day from morning to night at his camp in what can only be described as primitive conditions. He also has 4 of them living with him in his house.
Él me trajo aquí a su casa para hacerme pelotero, para ayudarme, para sacarme adelante, como él también fue pelotero, y para ayudarnos a cada uno de nosotros, porque nosotros estamos interesados en ser pelotero para llegar a la Grande Liga.
They train with improvised equipment in this unfinished cinder block house. The weights they use are made out of cement. The batting cage, a mangy net tethered to some trees.
Estoy sacrificando muchas cosas, por ejemplo, la escuela, y estoy lejos de mi familia y de mis seres queridos, y metiendo mano aquí buscando una firma.
Yo vine aquí que no sabía casi parar, no sabía batear, no sabía tirar, y él es el que me ha hecho pelotero a mí, que hoy en día, gracias a Dios, estoy gustando lo estrellado porque él me ha enseñado todo eso.
But for these boys who have given up their education for a chance to learn from a man who says he has played with the Angels and Padres, they might be in for a surprise. When we tried to verify Edgar's story, we were told by the San Diego Padres that Edgar had come to their tryouts, but they never signed him. And the Anaheim Angels said their contract with Edgar was never approved by Major League Baseball because he'd lied about his identity. Why would Edgar try to change his identity? The answer lies in the value professional baseball places on young players, who are considered free agents and can sign at 16. But the player has only a small window of opportunity. A talented 16-year-old may get a huge signing bonus, but by 19, the same boy may be considered too old. With so much money up for grabs, age and identity fraud cases like Edgar's are common. But the cheating goes far beyond lying about your age. Here, you can buy steroids without a prescription. And of the major and minor league players suspended this year for steroid use, about half are from the Dominican Republic. Even some trainers admit it. Baseball has bred corruption here at all levels.
Let me ask you, you've been doing this quite a while. Has any agent ever come up to you and said, I'll give you $500 or $5,000 if you will see that this young man signs with me, with the San Diego Padres or the New York Mets?
Yes.
It happens?
Yes.
And you told them no?
No.
But there have to be some people who will tell them yes.
Yes. It brings a lot of corruption. It brings a lot of corruption. Unfortunately, in this country, we have seen it in the news. We have seen it with Chicago White Sox. We have seen it with the Angels. We have seen it, the head of the Yankees here was replaced in the country also. Jose Rijos was replaced, and his boss from the Washington Nationals. You see it, the corruption is there.
Help me help the audience understand. How do you stop boys and young men from taking steroids or lying about their age to get ahead in baseball?
Everything is knowledge. It's not the young kids. They're innocent to the fact that they're very ignorant. They barely know how to write. They know absolutely nothing. And these agents come and they offer these kids ability to change their ages and give them steroids. And it's honestly, to me, it's just the agents. If we keep the same methods that we are, it's not going to stop. But we have to start somewhere. We have to find a solution.
But it may be beyond a Dominican solution. Major League Baseball, which invests millions in the Dominican Republic, has said enough is enough.
The abuses that exist there are so extensive that they have to be addressed. Team in 2000 when we had
In March 2010, Sandy Alderson was charged by Major League Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig with cleaning up the bad practices associated with Dominican baseball. Alderson's the former general manager of the Oakland Athletics, and he was the chief executive of the San Diego Padres. He has a reputation for getting the job done. We met with him at Major League Baseball's headquarters on New York's Park Avenue.
Well, we made it our business to speak to a fair number of people in the Dominican Republic. Several of them have said what I suspect you must have heard, that the practices that you, which is, say, Major League Baseball, are now engaged in, what you're trying to eradicate and or control, are a direct product of Major League Baseball. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I would largely agree with that. We've created a system down there that has real problems. One of the values that's placed on Latin players is their youth, is the ability to get them at such a young age. But I think that to some extent we've created an unrealistic environment. If you think about the average 16-year-old in this country, gangly, probably not terribly strong, not fully developed, certainly as still an adolescent. But what happens in other countries where these 16-year-olds are perceived to be so attractive athletically, we create a monster. We've got somebody who's 19 who portrays himself as 16. We've got somebody that takes performance-enhancing drugs to bulk up from 160 pounds to 190 pounds, all because of this notion that the ideal signee is a 16-year-old with great bat speed or terrific arm or the kinds of things you just don't find very often in 16-year-old kids.
And if the U.S. government determines a young player has lied about his age, his visa will be denied. He won't play in the United States, and the baseball club will lose the signing bonus they pay. So, what is Sandy Alderson doing to address Major League Baseball's Dominican dilemma? That part of the story is next. The Dominican Republic is about as close as you'll get to the Wild West of baseball. For years, lawlessness was the rule, not the exception. Trainers raking in up to 50% of a young player's signing bonus produced a system that is rife with the incentive to cheat. Major League Baseball's Sandy Alderson has been charged with the task of cleaning up baseball down here. After coming down for the last 20 years, first as a major club executive, now as a troubleshooter for the baseball commissioner, Alderson knows the country well. We're talking about problems of making players younger and stronger. Did you know about these issues when you were the CEO of the San Diego Padres?
Yeah, I was aware of. In fact, we signed a couple of players the last year I was with the Padres who turned out to have had false identities. And that was a total of about $1.4 million down the drain. I can remember when I used to go to the Dominican Republic, other places, we would sign 10 or 15 players. It might be $5,000 or $10,000 a piece. Today, you can spend $4 million on one player. That's not what investors like to do. You know, they like to diversify, they like to spread their risk, and so these issues of identity and drug use and so forth become critical.
For the past 7 months, Alderson has been implementing a series of programs and protocols trying to reduce these risks and protect baseball's bottom line. The focus, testing and verifying prospects before they have a contract.
This year we signed up 40 players in advance of their signing a contract. We tried a pilot program to do identity investigations and drug testing before they ever signed a contract. Those 40 players, about a third of them failed the drug test.
A third of them?
So what was happening was their trainers, their agents, were putting them on performance-enhancing drugs prior to their tryouts, their evaluations, sign a big contract, and then clubs would test them for drugs after signing the contract. They might turn up positive and they get suspended, but the fact is the contract's already signed, and so what? So what we did was extend this program
before signing the contract.
Before signing.
Later this year, at least 500 prospects will be asked to take drug tests and have their identity verified. That won't be an easy task.
Typically what happens is you have to build a case with circumstantial evidence, and so you're looking not only at birth records but school records, hospital records. You might be looking at things like family portraits. It's more of an art for those that are involved in investigating these cases than a science.
While Alderson works on trying to build a more transparent system,
Suavecito el swing.
those dependent on baseball, like trainer Aston Jacobo, are trying to figure out how potential changes will affect their livelihoods. Already the number of contract signings has fallen because investigations into players are taking longer.
The signing of ball players are dropped a lot. For instance, I have a kid here who's compared to Sammy Sosa. And he has more power than half of the players that are signed today. We haven't been able to sign him yet. There's a big, strong hand holding things down here, and we're feeling it.
But the real fear is what could happen next. Some Dominicans see Major League Baseball eventually throwing out the current free agent system and instituting an international draft. That could reduce costs by lowering signing bonuses and the number of signed players, and reduce commissions for trainers like Jacobo.
Mr. Anderson would tell us that he's not here for that. But we know that he's here on a contract with the MLB office to give them whatever option he thinks the Major League is going to need for them to perform a draft here. And since he's here as a in a consulting contract, he's not going to tell us, exactly what he wants to do.
A Dominican draft would mean placing players in compensation categories, commensurate with their talent.
The motivation for the international draft is money. It's reducing costs.
Mercedes, Tapia, acá.
Ulysses Cabrera is a Dominican who thinks he has a better idea. He's a sports agent and co-founder of the Dominican Prospect League, a year-old Dominican nonprofit organization created to showcase Dominican players for professional clubs.
There's already a huge disparity between what Latin American players receive and their American counterparts. If you were to multiply the average signing bonus of a player in Latin America by 5, you still wouldn't get to the average signing bonus of a player of the similar talent in the United States. In the Dominican Republic, baseball is a sense of pride. It's ingrained in the culture much more than it is in the United States. The concern is that this powerful American business, focused primarily on money, can impose a new process that will reduce the value of the very talent that will lead to the industry doing well in the future.
Cabrera believes that if anyone can fix the problems plaguing baseball here, it should be Dominicans. The goal for his league is to open up the process, have organized games, keep statistics, so future stars can be evaluated against their peers over a period of time. There's even a website where scouts can watch videos of prospects in action. And Major League Baseball is beginning to buy it. On this September day, club scouts from around the region assemble at the Yankees Academy to evaluate league players' skills.
We have a solution that works, that solves the very issues that everybody in baseball has complained about in Latin America. It benefits not only Major League Baseball and its clubs, but also the families and the players and the trainers that are involved in capturing their dreams, while being compensated in a way that's consistent with the type of talent that they are as ball players.
The new Dominican Prospect League is the first of its kind in the country. Its players have already signed more than $10 million in contracts. But more importantly, Cabrera hopes the Dominican Prospect League can help convince Sandy Alderson and Major League Baseball that a player draft is unnecessary.
For the record, and just to set it straight, you didn't go down there to be a, quote, Trojan horse for institution of a draft.
No, that's not.
Bud Selig, who's the commissioner of baseball, didn't say to you, on the side, let's be moving things toward a draft.
Well, it was clear to me when I went down that there had been for years, and there was the potential in the future for a draft, an international draft. What I said when I got down there was that we needed to address these problems. If we were able to address them successfully, there was less likelihood that there would be a draft. So I've never said there won't be a draft if we deal with these, but I've said, look, we don't deal with these problems. If I can't succeed in dealing with these, I'll be gone. Nobody will be sent down here to replace me, and you'll end up with a draft.
It's hard to know how an international draft would work, but the current American baseball draft requires all draftees to have a high school education. But many prospects in the Dominican Republic gave up on school to become ball players. It's a problem with any international draft that trainers like Jacobo believe will put Dominican prospects at a disadvantage.
Now, if we Americanize baseball in the Dominican Republic, if we put in a draft, we're going to be into a lot of disadvantage. And why is that? Our kids, sometimes they don't complete school. Our kids don't have the luxury to say, I'm not going to take this contract because I don't like it and I'm going to go to college. They don't have that.
Despite the long odds, there are some who do make it. Up next, the future of Dominican baseball. It's a balmy August evening in New Jersey at Mercer County Waterfront Park, home to the Trenton Thunder Baseball Club. the minor league AA team for the mighty New York Yankees. As the players warm up on the field, the crowd fills in with excited young fans eager to hold on to the last days of summer. Minor league baseball, even more than the big leagues, is where the ideal of the American pastime really comes to life. The towns are often small, the ballparks intimate, and the tickets, hot dogs, and beer aren't too expensive. Many a 10-year-old has sat in these stands and dreamed of future glory on the diamond. But increasingly, the kids in the seats and the men on the field come from completely different worlds. It's remarkable to think that 25% of all minor league ball players now hail from the Dominican Republic. They are living a dream, but it's as much about earning a living as playing a game they love. For them, even their modest salaries of a couple of $1,000s a month mean they have hit the big time. Wilkins de la Rosa is a 25-year-old pitcher.
Ha cambiado mucho ya que yo vengo de una familia bien pobre y la oportunidad que yo tuve de tener un contrato y de conseguir algo de dinero, lo cual nos pudo ayudar a tener nuestra propia casa y nos ayudó financieramente a tener muchas cosas que no podíamos conseguir ya que no teníamos la posibilidad.
On this night, the crowd is happy. The home team has won, and the evening ends with a fireworks display. A couple of weeks later, the season ends. The young fans go back to school, and the players go back home. For many of them, that's the Dominican Republic. But in their home country, for every success story, there are hundreds more like this young man. His name is Carlos Miguel Lara. He is 23 years old, and baseball has given up on him long before he was ready.
Oye, en este país hay tres cosas que para tú llegar a tener dinero en este país, tú tienes que ser una de las tres. Ser artista, ser pelotero, ser funcionario. Entonces, el ser artista, tú tienes que ser rico desde que naciste, prácticamente, o tener la suerte. El ser funcionario, tú tienes que robar para tú poder ser funcionario. Y el ser pelotero, tú puedes ser pelotero desde que tú eres pobre.
And Carlos was poor. But he had a dream to be a professional baseball player. A dream that ended when the young pitcher injured his throwing arm.
Jugué béisbol, es muy doloroso no llegar a filmar después que tú te duras 10, 12 años partiéndote la cabeza en un terreno de juego de béisbol para después que ya tú te metes en edad de no poder firmar. Óyeme, es muy difícil. Hoy cuando uno tiene una pareja de 15 años y de la noche a la mañana ya tú no vas a vivir en esa casa.
After baseball, Carlos had a difficult time finding work.
¿Cómo me explico? Es muy fuerte, pero son cosas que ya uno las tapa ya, uno la deja al olvido, uno la deja un poquito oculto porque si no se pone a darle mente, puede tener problemas uno mismo después.
Carlos dropped out of school for baseball. He now sells perfume door to door. His story is not unique. With untold numbers of young men sacrificing their educations to chase the baseball dream, there's little to fall back on. Dominican trainer Aston Jacobo says it's just a reality of life.
When we talk about education, we probably have one of the worst educations in the world. We are only, the only place that spend less money in education than us is Haiti, which is, you know how poor the country is. We only spend 2% of our national growth in education, and we have 160 years of that. That didn't start yesterday. So the education in baseball is not a problem with the guys that are dealing with baseball. It's a country problem.
The development of players at an early age, even when it comes at the price of their education, is something that makes them attractive to Major League Baseball. But Sandy Alderson, head of Major League Baseball operations here, believes lack of education is a big problem.
So we ourselves don't value education the way we should, but we can. And if we do, will we be a beacon for the rest of the country? I don't know the answer to that, but I'd like to think that that's possible.
A few of the Major League academies say they do emphasize education, like those of the Padres and Rays. But Alderson believes academies should spend more time on players' education.
There are educational requirements that we ought to impose in order that our kids who are developing as players are also developing as students and have some fallback.
With the blessing of Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig, Alderson is now working on an educational program that will be mandated in all academies. And Major League Baseball isn't just influencing the lives of the elite athletes lucky enough to get into these academies. Its impact continues to grow, far away from the diamond. 2 years ago, baseball joined up with the U.S. Agency for International Development to fund grants for healthcare clinics, microfinancing projects, educational initiatives, and after-school programs like this one outside of Santo Domingo. So far, they've committed $1.3 million for community development programs.
¿Cómo se dice profesor? ¿Cómo se dice señor? We have a lot of new kids that are illiterate. I'm talking about 12-year-olds, 11, 10-year-olds that don't know how to read or write. But when you speak to them, you can realize that they're not stupid. You know, they're really clever. They're really smart. Not only street smart, but smart. So it's just a matter of giving them the opportunity to actually get an education. Hay poder en aprender. ¿Y quién le canta la canción?
Carolina Martinez is the director of a program called Power in Learning.
What did you learn? Huh?
It's a unique after-school center she co-founded in 2009 with her husband, the legendary Dominican Major League Baseball pitcher Pedro Martinez. He is one of the few lucky ones who have earned millions, and he and his wife know that riches like theirs might be able to educate kids about something other than baseball.
The most proud thing is that it's, you know, sometimes it's 7 at night and they don't want to leave this place. Or you come here at 6:30 in the morning and you find kids here. We open at 8. Una, dos, tres. So when they come here, for them it's a space that they can grow, they can learn, they can have fun. And with the arts, it has been a key component of our success, I would say, with the kids. It's an inner process that, you know, it's hard to put into words.
The center also feeds and provides uniforms and supplies for the 350 participating children. It's something desperately needed here and expensive to run.
Here we prepare the snacks for the kids, and this is where they take their cooking classes.
At least $200,000 a year. In its first operating year, nearly half of that money was funded by what's known as the Major League Baseball Dominican Development Alliance.
This is their favorite spot here. This in the kitchen.
But cynics say programs like this are just good publicity vehicles for Major League Baseball. Though Acting Director James Watson, who oversees the U.S. Agency for International Development in the Dominican Republic, argues that regardless of intent, these programs are making a difference.
This is baseball and the U.S. taxpayers through our resources and these NGOs and players and fans giving to these communities and supporting these communities. Sure, it will improve, it should improve baseball's image, but that's not why we're doing it, and it's not where the real impact is going to come. The real impact is going to happen at the community level in this country.
But Sandy Alderson's and baseball's primary interest remains the bottom line, hiring the best players possible. That makes it difficult to change a system that has long placed its own interests ahead of the players.
I think that if we can begin to influence these independent trainers to spend more time thinking about education, not quite as much on just developing these kids, if we can make it difficult for them to use drugs and get away with it, if we can make it so risky that they won't try to change their identity, and create a situation where we actually value kids that are 18 or 19 years old. Those are things that fundamentally will change the environment down there.
Since our program first aired, Sandy Alderson was hired by the New York Mets to be their general manager. But he says he remains committed to reforming Dominican baseball. Last month, Alderson attended a two-day conference in Santo Domingo where Major League Baseball executives and members of the local baseball community were joined by American and Dominican government officials to discuss the problems we've reported on tonight. And that's our program for this evening. For HDNet, from New York, Dan Rather reporting. Good night. If you would like to add your name to an email list for information on upcoming programs, or if you would just like to send a question or comment, please email us at viewer@hd.net.